Hello everyone, and welcome back to another Total Warhammer 3 guide. This time I'm going to be covering Nurgle. I'm Lord Foreign, so let's jump right into it. So Nurgle is one of the Chaos Gods, probably the oldest of them. Um, and he plays very strange for a Chaos God. He has the ability to create plagues and spread them, help you or hurt the enemies. And his buildings are cyclical, and we'll get into why that matters. But as we move forward here, the faction effects growth plus 10, recruitment cost cheaper for Nurgling units, and recruitment health plus 40 for Nurgling units. Again, trying to incentivize using of those units. Infection cost is 50% cheaper on your starting lord. Corruption plus 2, chances of plagues spreading plus 15%. And yes, if this faction grosses you out, or talking about plagues and viruses grosses you out, probably a good time to stop right about now and never touch this guy. But let's jump right into his starting position and we'll continue from there. Okay, here we are. This is the Nurgle faction start of position. Poxmakers of Nurgle. So you start here, located on the map. You're pretty much, I'd say pretty much in the middle of the map, which has both benefits and disadvantages. To your north is going to be almost all the other Chaos factions. To your south and east is going to be a lot of ogres. And further to the south, across this little sea here, the frozen sea, you're going to start running into Norska along this coast, and then further south, Kislev. This is probably the faction outside of Teach that you're going to spend most of your time not fighting Chaos factions, which is kind of interesting. It's, in my opinion, a pretty good start. The people to your north you can be friends with. In fact, you are at the start, so you don't really have to worry about being invaded there. And it's very easy to gain Nurgle's first province. A little bit harder to keep it against constant invasions. So basically, expansion, fight this battle, you'll get a lord, add it to the lord, conquer this after a turn of recruitment, conquer this, come down here, conquer this, then figure out if you want to keep going this way and conquering stuff, before turning around and almost inevitably invading or fighting off Kislev to the south. That's basically your expansion point. So you're starting settlement is level 1, which is a little annoying. But Nurgle, if he has high corruption, the corruption actually gives both control and, more importantly, growth. So if you have 100% Nurgle corruption, combined with the faction traits and other buildings, you can actually grow Nurgle settlements really quickly. Some of the Nurgle techs are, in my opinion, some of the best in the game. And Nurgle is definitely a faction that gets stronger the later the game goes with some of their plague abilities. So in your capital, if you look at any of these buildings, you'll notice that there's a circle. And basically, if you build this one, it'll stay on this for a handful of turns. And then it'll move after 4 turns to this one for free. You don't have to do anything. After 4 turns to there, 4 turns to there, 4 turns to there, 4 turns to there, before going all the way back to the start. So at start, the building will provide 30. At the end, it'll provide 300 income per turn. And every time it moves to a new one, it will give you a new summonable unit. Summonable units are very key to how Nurgle plays. As Nurgle, you're probably going to be losing a lot of troops. I know that Slaanesh is kind of infamous for how glass cannony their troops are. I honestly, in my opinion, find that Nurgle troops die more often than Slaanesh's. Even though they're pretty decent combatants. It's kind of strange, and a lot of lord abilities can help with that. But to start, you will find that you have basically no defense buildings. You have this one here, which is kind of your standard one, with the additional effect of chance of plague spreading plus 50. This would be a good building to build on your front lines. I recommend you start by throwing down in a infrastructure building, which also give units and provide a garrison. You're probably going to want to start with this one just because it provides growth, and as we know, growth is king. As you build up your settlements, you get better units. This one just gives control, but since you'll be fighting with an army, probably not a big issue. This one gives casualty replenishment, is definitely worth building several of these because I found Nurgle's replenishment rate rather low. Even buffed with blue lines and other stuff. There's a reason for that, and we'll get into it, but this will help a bit. And then over here, this actually speeds up how often that your buildings will cycle, specifically your military ones. And then in the end, you have a unique Court of the Covenant building there as well. Interestingly, for Nurgle, you can build most of these buildings in almost any settlement. It's just kind of how it plays. It's rather kind of weird. But as Nurgle, you can't just go here and just start training troops. Instead, you have a pool of units you can recruit from. It's quite fun. At the start, I'd recommend you grab Beast of Nurgle. It's a very powerful unit. Probably, here's your Nurglelings, which are pretty much your cheapest and weakest unit, but you do get extra health for them because of your trait faction summary. So it's actually pretty useful for them. The only faction that gets it is like the Demon Prince, the customizable Demon Prince faction, who can get some Nurgle units. Probably grab some Plague Bearers, some Toads. Basically, in my opinion, you probably want to spend most of your money. And you'll see when you get them, they don't start full health, and the regen is really slow. That's just how Nurgle factions start. Downside is, obviously, I didn't get a building, but on the plus side, I have an army I can conquer with. This is a very powerful unit. All of Nurgle units, by the way, basically have poison attacks, which makes playing with them kind of interesting because as you fight in battle, the enemies get weaker. It's very solid. Okay, I'm going to jump to a later save on one of my runs, and we'll continue from there. See you in a moment. Okay, here we are. This is around turn 88 on one of my runs. So up here you have your starting area, obviously. This will give you a better idea of what's around you. Obviously things have changed, but in my experience, the Teach factions are usually here, Khorne's here, Slaanesh, if they survive, are usually over there, and that's kind of how it works out. Interestingly enough, as a Chaos faction, you're going to declare war on basically everybody you encounter, with the kind of odd exception of the Ogre Kingdoms. But stuff like greenskins and all the other humans, yeah, you're going to be at war with them. So, as you can see, here's the 4 I mentioned. There's, and again, Dwarf Province stuff over here. And obviously ogres, you could theoretically fight them. I found it was better to have them as a bulwark. And then cross the sea and fight Kislev because they were busy invading me around this time. I'd quickly proceed to take these and start unleashing plagues further into Kislev. But I wanted to kind of show you what... where they're located in the map and who I'm kind of at war with. Allied with almost all the Chaos factions. Surprisingly, most of them get along half decently well with Nurgle, which is interesting because Teach supposedly hates him. Didn't really see that in my games, in all honesty. Okay, let's get into technology, I think, because Nurgle's techs again are very interesting. So Nurgle has 7 tech things, and obviously you need to research a certain amount in each category to move further. There are some you want to take, some you want to avoid. In my opinion, the ones you probably want to grab are usually the bottom right ones here in each category. They tend to give you bonuses to your plague spreading. This one doesn't, but this gives line of sight when a plague is spread, which is very helpful for scouting the map. If you really want to learn the full map, playing as the Nurgle faction and just taking that and running around and spreading plagues is not a bad thing. Instead, the plague spreading bonus is up here, Contagious Horde. Again, over here, Child of Nurgle, chance of plague spreading 1. Over here, again, you are unlocking more plague symptoms, which are always solid. And then again over here, plague duration and spread. Chance of plague spreading +5. There's certain ones you want to grab, and then again here, chance of plague spreading 4, and then plague spreading 5. I recommend grabbing those. A lot of Nurgle's gameplay revolves around those plagues, so those are worth grabbing. At the first, grabbing growth, always solid. Come to grandfather here, because in general, Nurgle's the oldest, so this will get him relations with Khorne and Slaaneshi factions, so that they get along better with him. Favorite children plus leadership for Nurgles is always good. That should be enough to move you on. I didn't take these. This one could be possible if you want to speed up getting units, but I never seemed to have that much trouble with recruiting what units I wanted. as long as I built them. In fact, I usually struggled more with the gold to build them than being able to build what I wanted. Further on this one here, again, as I mentioned, plague spreading, but also plague duration plus 3 turns is a part of the plagues you can cook up. These ones right here, if you want experience, it's great. This one's just a speed boost. This one here, snag if you're fighting the teaching factions. Otherwise, kind of ignore it. Moving further on, as again I said, grab this one for plague symptoms, this one for spreading. This one I found pretty good because Beast of Nurgle's strong. This just helps it versus infantry. This one a cycle time just to make sure I have more units. Plague Paragon's good if you're losing and needing more lords. I haven't struggled with losing lords because I move my armies around basically as 2. Could grab this one to boost Beast of Nurgle even higher. This one, cooldown on all spells. Kind of nice if you're heavy into spell casting. Over here, if you're fighting Kislev, I figured it was worth grabbing extra XP just to make your units stronger faster. This one, again, speed up cycles if you're struggling with keeping your buildings giving you units. This one is growth in temperate climates. Probably not that great to get them because I am still up in the icy areas 88 turns in, but it's possible. Up here, another plague unlock, Nurgle Corruption plus 6. I avoid this one just because Nurgle Corruption isn't that hard to spread anyway. Most plagues spread it as a result of just being there. Further on, recruitment cost is always nice. Recruitment cost cheaper is always nice, especially for Nurgle, who struggles a little bit, in my opinion, with money. Mainly due to the cyclical thing. Sometimes you have large income, sometimes it drops. Casualty replenishment, always a solid one. Might even grab this first in the category. Up here you can get more symptoms. Over here, bonus if you're fighting Norska. I haven't fought Norska, haven't bothered to get it at this point. And then this one, cheaper upkeep for Forsaken of Nurgle. Probably good if you're using the Forsaken of Nurgle units. Over here, again, casualty replenishment, which is solid. Unfortunately, it's only on 1 unit, but they're a half-decent unit. Over here, this is a very powerful one, growing buboes. Sorry. And you get basically a population up of 1 and newly conquered settlements, which means you can automatically upgrade most settlements to level 2 as soon as you get them, which is nice because it just obviously makes it easier to expand. Again, upkeep. This, if you're fighting ogres, it's solid. Grab this one if you're, again, trying to cycle units faster. This one for spreading the plague. It's always good to grab spreading plagues. And here at the end, as you continue to the end, this gives you extra ammunition, which is nice. This one, again, speed up cycling. Grab this one for the plague spreading and also for the spell Fleshy Abundance for Great Unclean One units. That helps with healing. Up here, plus 10 settlements with mountain climates. This is a little bit more useful. You're more likely to have mountains than temperate offhand. This one, resistance if you're fighting Cathay. This one, again, another plus 1 population surplus. Again, very useful. And then up here at that as well. So you could theoretically get plus 3 population in newly captured settlements, which is all very powerful as Nurgle. So next thing I think probably to cover is replenishment. Reason is Nurgle struggles quite a bit with it. In my opinion. I mean, some people will say it's pretty good. I found that the regen rate could be a lot better. It's not absolutely amazing. So how to get around it? If you take a lord and you start building them up, pestilential spawnings, plus 6 casualty replenishment rate. Wow, can't talk all of a sudden. That is very useful to grab. And it also provides growth to your local province. That's going to be a big help there. Unfortunately, none of your hero units give replenishment like that. In general, they're either fighter ones or they're mobility and spread corruption. You could use them all. As usual, keep a hero and usually an army back. I can't afford another army at this point, so I've just got a hero to close any rifts that spawn where I don't want them. And I basically have concentrated the plague-ridden units in the armies. And that helps with that. So in terms of getting increased regen, you're going to be using this Unholy Manifestation ability. a little bit more as Nurgle than I did as the other factions. I use it a bit on the Slaanesh, not as much on Khorne or Teach, but on Nurgle it's quite useful. The first one, Pestilential Growth, plus 20 your casualty replenishment rate in the province, basically. That's how you regen your units as Nurgle. Downside is you can't move, but as Nurgle you kind of expand, pause for a little bit to rebuild money, gold, and upgrade, and get your cycles to get better units. If you've lost an 8, then you expand again. Very much cyclical, like they said, growth. You can go faster. It's just difficult with losing units, and the fact that I found I need at least 2 Nurgle armies and sometimes even a garrison to fight Kislev's good armies. Further down here, you got Blessing of Nurgle. This is a good one if you're trying to spread plagues faster. And this one is amazing. Growth plus 200, recruitment cost negative 20. This would stack really well with the techs that give you population surplus when you take provinces. You could really develop land quite quickly. And at the end, Nurgle's Visitation. Random plague will begin into every settlement and army in this province upon completion. And takes 3 turns. It's pretty powerful. You get a random plague. Downside is it costs you a lot of unholy manifestations, and you're pretty much going to want to use this while fighting. It is extraordinarily useful when you're in a chaos realm hunting for souls. Surprisingly, and this is something I didn't think would be the case before I played Nurgle, Nurgle is probably the best at completing the Realms of Chaos challenges due to this growth and the fact that his plagues can help him when he's in a realm, and also the fact that Nurgle units are immune to Nurgle corruption, which means going up there and grabbing the soul from the Nurgle realm is extraordinarily easy for Nurgle. In fact, I did it as the first one just because I knew I could complete it without taking attrition in this game. Okay, let's get down to the actual meat and potatoes of how Nurgle plays here with plagues. So Nurgle has a unique resource here, infections. This is similar in many ways to the Slaanesh's devotees and other stuff. I found it Slaanesh's to be the closest equivalent. You gain it from buildings, plagues, captives, raiding and looting, and you use it to create plagues. Which means the plagues you spread, at least early on, need to get you infections back. And there are ways to do that at the beginning. And then later on, as you can see, I'm starting to get it from buildings. On average, a plague is going to cost about 100 to 150 to build a good plague. So it's worth paying attention to that. How to create this? The Plague Cauldron, you have to select an army or settlement. Because basically, to spread them, you infect your own units, or you create a unit that goes out and infects people. So if we click here on this province, you'll see that this is now available. This brings to a rather disturbing image of someone cooking up plagues. And this is where you get to select what you want for plagues. There are some unique recipes that you can do down here. That as you unlock stuff, you can then create them. And they're strong. They're very strong. But you can also customize. So you start out with your base 5 here. This one, infections, corruptions on your buildings, gives growth and cycle time. This is really solid at the beginning when you're wanting to grow your provinces and get stuff. And so as you can see, every time the plague is spread between stuff, you get 5 infections. The base cost of a plague is 50. That means you would have to spend 10 times to pay it off. And there are ways to make more. Over here, this will make it casualty replenishment, hurt on enemy armies while giving you a benefit. The plus attrition while under siege is actually really solid. I didn't think I'd use it as much as I have, but if you come across a province with a strong garrison and it's like a Pyrrhic victory or something, by all means toss a plague on it. A turn on your armies there, fight a battle, and sometimes it'll get on the settlement and then it'll fall faster. This one here is probably going to be your standard plague at the beginning whenever you're fighting people who are invading you or stronger. Nurgle is both very good at defense because you can cause enemies to move slower, take attrition and other penalties when they come to attack. They're about to take a settlement. throw down a plague on it, they may take the settlement, but then your army that comes to retake the settlement for you usually will find the people in there are 90% dead due to attrition and stuff. It's very useful. This one, I haven't found it as useful as some of the other ones. It gives you a Nurgling unit every time plague is spread. You're not going to run out of Nurgling units, especially if you build infrastructure. Let me tell you, I think I've got a reserve of 35 at this point or more. And that goes up your reserves, how much you can store as you upgrade settlements. This one reduces melee attack. Good against ogres, a little bit less good against Kislev because they use a lot of range. But it's still a solid ability. In terms of symptoms, you've got control on your settlements, negative control on enemies, just makes them more rebellious. Combine it with something that spreads Nurgle corruption, which, as you can see, all of them do. And you can start causing revolts and rebellions in enemy lands. This one, again, attrition while under siege. Similar to this one, as you can imagine. Kind of together, they're strong. And then speed for infantry, it's okay. These ones, a lot of these you actually have to meet certain requirements to unlock. So example, this one I have to spread rot 5 times to unlock, and I haven't done so. This would be pretty good against Kislev. Reduced range and accuracy. It's pretty solid. Reduce weapon damage. And I could keep going with these, but let's highlight some of the big ones. So this one, chance of plague spreading up. It's always good. This one, chance of plague spreading plus 20. I use this one probably the most because you're investing infections in these plagues. It'd be great if they actually spread to repay some of that investment, especially early on. It's a pretty easy one to get, pretty easy to use. This one here, not even going to try and say that. I think it's pustulant. I tried. Plague duration up. Combine these two, you're going to have a plague that spreads more and lasts longer. Combine it with something with attrition, and you can really start to see some damage to the enemy lands. It's almost like one of these advanced plagues, that combo. And then this one's a solid one, fever. Once you get it, you combine it with something that spreads, you can get you can supplement your income with this, which as Nurgle, I really did find keeping a good economy and being able to recruit units constantly was hard because I lost so many units in battles. If you personally command every single battle, you could probably bring that loss rate down. But regardless, this is a way to make some good money off of it. Some of these other ones, this one's kind of interesting in the sense that it gives you the ability to get plague bearers, again, supplementing your armies, which are solid. This one just gets you more infections, again, spreading rot, which is, up here. So basically, these categories unlock the more you use some of these stuff. That's kind of it. The rest of these ones, they all have their place in the game. This one right here, combine it with some of these other ones to really spread your corruption. Nurgle is probably the easiest to spread his corruption through the world, just due to plagues, giving you more unholy manifestations. It's really quite useful to do so. So in terms of what units to use on Nurgles, so this right here is probably a half-decently solid army for this point in the game. So you've got your Forsaken, which are your standard sword infantry that basically every Chaos God gets. Nurgles are okay in the sense that their poison attacks really help make them stronger than they would seem to be. Plague Bearers or Nurgle, again, another one of your sword infantry. Not armored. By and large, it's going to lose a fight to the Forsaken, but you're going to end up with a half-decent amount of them. Plus, they have physical resistance stuff you can get on them, which does help them stay alive for quite a while. Then you got your Nurglings, which are kind of swarm units. They're not amazing, but they do an okay job of weakening enemies. Then you get your Beasts of Nurgle, very powerful in terms of fighting. Further down, you get some of these flying war beasts, which are kind of interesting. I might replace some of these and the Nurglings as things continue if I was playing this. Spawn of Nurgle, again, one of the Chaos spawns. They're solid. Basically, all the Chaos spawns are really half decent. Then you get into some of the most powerful units in the game. You get your Soul Grinders. They're solid on any of them. Nurgles in particular are really nasty here because they add poison. They do have low ammunition, so just be aware of that. But even after they're out of ammunition, they're pretty good in combat. And you get plague drones. Let's actually just create a army here so you can see what some of the other units are. We added okay. Nope, sorry, wrong thing. So you've got other ones. You've got some weaker flying war beasts. I would kind of honestly skip these, go with these, just in my opinion. They're a little bit better. These plague toads of Nurgle, pretty solid in the sense that they do what they're kind of meant to do, which is move quickly, hit reasonably hard. Chaos Furies, I really have not found a great use for them unless you're fighting somebody who also has flying units. If you're going to go fight Cathay and they have flying artillery, grab some Chaos Furies, basically. Otherwise, really wouldn't go for them that much. Again, Soul Grinders and the rest here. Exalted Plague Bearers are getting to be, a stronger unit. They have a ranged weapon, so they kind of play similar to how Kislev does. They do decent damage, short range. Pox Riders, again, here's another fast, hard-hitting unit. Great Unclean Ones. These are pretty solid ones. They've got some abilities over here to cast spells and stuff, which makes them pretty useful. And then you've got some other ones. Basically, it's not going to be too hard to figure out the Nurgle units. The higher tiered units are by and large better than the weaker tier units. Everything applies poison. And fighting actual battles can be quite difficult. This army here, around this time, I've been fighting her for a while. In fact, she sailed around. You stick some of these plagues on it. These units are still so powerful. Even with half her army gone due to plague, she could still beat some of my armies one-on-one. So just be aware, again, if you've played Slaanesh, or you're going to play Slaanesh, it's similar to Nurgle. You don't really want to fight a fair fight. You're not Khorne. So have plagues constantly moving in your armies as you advance, because it'll cause pain and havoc. If the enemy invades, throw down a plague in your lands. As you can see here, this is a plague that spreads, does some damage, and it'll slow them down in that way. As a general gameplay tip, I would say try to have a plague going all the time. There's nothing to be said that you cannot have more than one plague running at a time. You can only create one plague at each turn, and that's quite useful. As the game continues, you may find that you get cults spreading around the world. I didn't get nearly as many as someone like Slaanesh does, but you get several if they have high Nurgle corruption and nothing else happens. I found these plague cult shelters probably the standard ones to build because they provide more infections, especially early on. They will help maintain a constant stream of it. There's other effects in them. I can't easily show you right there. But they're solid units. The other thing you can remember with, in general, Nurgle, is that you do have allied recruitment stuff. I actually didn't have any at this point. I don't remember in one of my saves I started doing it, but you can start recruiting some other units from Teach or Khorne to supplement your army. Khornes are going to be really good in melee. Teach are going to be a little bit more special. They'll help. Just be wary of how and when you use them. You can win as Nurgle. In fact, completing the realms are pretty easy. Slaanesh is obviously a joke. Nurgle is easy because you don't have attrition, so you can just march normally, even though winning the actual battles as Nurgle can be tricky because basically Nurgle's armies can't win straight fights, and you have to win straight fights there, so that's your weakness. Khorne, stick some plagues on it before you go in, and that will help a lot. And Teaches, honestly, the solution to Teach is just make a save as the turn you go in, learn the path, reload the save, and do it quickly, or spend 20, 30 turns wandering around trying to get through there. Again, the fact that you can get plus 20 replenishment on your armies will help you quite a bit on the Chaos Realms. Then when you do final battles or major battles, just put a huge amount of elite units in there. Nurgle's elite units are elite. That's why they're there. The roster is not so amazingly deep. I have to give great depth on them. In terms of actual spells, So actually, before I do that, let's just point out the fact that this legendary lord guy probably has the most like unique uh, trait things that you can basically start to get almost at the beginning, and they provide a lot of effects. Growth, all provinces winning battles, summon Nurglings, defense for Nurglings, unlocks plague riddance, chance of plague spreading, all armies plus, ammunition, regeneration, and upkeep for Nurgling units. This guy is really into Nurglings, which makes it a little bit more worth using them. Augmented areas, defense, and then Lord of Stench, cheaper, and passive abilities. Yeah, there's just a lot of them. The actual Nurgle spells, I was a little under impressed by some of them. This, every time that you cast a spell, you heal, making it similar to, say, like the vampire counts or the Tomb Kings to some degree. It's nice. Nurgle's units tend to be a little bit harder to kill than one would expect, and these things can help. This one, poison damage, pierces armor. It's okay. Curse of the Leper makes your units have damage and reflect melee damage. Pretty solid if you throw it on some units that are in the middle of enemies. It'll just have them do more damage. Some of these get more useful. Rancid Visitations, throwing it on a character unit, will do a fair amount of damage to them over time. Fleshy Abundance, especially if you overcast it, will heal people in an area so you can keep your armies fighting longer. Explosion does damage, not as much damage as you would imagine, but it's still pretty solid. And then obviously the other standard ones. They're okay. Nurgle spells are half decent. I just didn't use them that much until later game. And then of course he's got his unique line. But if we were to look at here, you have the death spells. These ones are solid. These ones are they're the same as from Total Warhammer 2. Again, Spirit Leech is probably still one of the strongest abilities in the game for deleting enemy lords. It's got a long range, does some solid damage, doesn't cost the most of Winds of Magic to use. And then further down here, you've got stuff that reduces leadership and enemy armor. So a lot of disabling spells. Purple Sun of Xerxes. I probably said that wrong. I don't know why I said Xerxes. Bajuna and whatever, Zeres. Does solid damage, so use these while the enemy's bogged down with your units. Don't worry too much about your units. The fact that you can recruit your units in one turn instantly means if you lose units, you just add new ones, keep pushing forward. It's really powerful. Nurgle is, again, cycles. There'll be pause periods where you lose armies, you have to rebuild, or you run out of money, or wait for buildings to cycle, and then you'll get a huge bunch of stuff, push forward, wait, throw down plagues if the enemy tries to invade, rinse and repeat. A lot of forethought, probably one of the more complex factions in the game, just because you have to think not direct battle, you have to think spells and planning ahead on when and how they'll spread, but they're solid. The plagues do a little bit less damage than you would imagine, but they're still really good. Yeah, so I think that's it mainly for Nurgle. Ally the Chaos people, conquer your starting province, choose if you're going to go after Kislev or the Ogres. Either way, Kislev's coming for you. Ogres are greenskins down here, may or may not. The Ogres through here tended to leave me alone. No real wars with the other Chaos factions unless you really want to pick them. And it's actually a lot easier than you'd think doing Realms as Nurgle. It's quite a fun game once you get going. The ability to just drive the enemy crazy with plagues and stuff. The Ares handle it fairly well. If they get plagues and they start suffering attrition, they run away, which leaves you open to race in and expand. And also remember, you can create, and I forgot totally to mention this. On this page here, if you create a plague, you can summon a plague cultist, which is a unit with the plague. It's more expensive. But if you summon, say, this plague cultist, you can then march it into the enemy lands, and it'll basically commit suicide, but it'll start a plague there. Very powerful. I threw one down up in the Cathay area and learned, as you can see, it spread quite a bit, caused quite a bit of havoc to the enemy early on, got me vision. Do it to Kislev several times as you start invading, and just watch as they get a lot weaker than you'd imagine. So anyway, that is going to be a guide for Nurgle. Hope you enjoy it. Check out my other ones if you haven't. Please do like and subscribe if this helps you. And hopefully see you guys all in another guide or let's play. Bye for now.